Hey everybody, it's Self here from Celljoy, and I'm back with another video. And today I wanted to discuss some of the synthesizers that we can use to create a really personal, custom palette for the projects that you're trying to produce. And there's no better instrument to really do that than a synthesizer. So today I want to talk and go through some of the really cool synthesizers that I found in the App Store for the iPad, that of course you can bring them into your favorite DAW, but then you can also use them as performance synths as well in a live situation. So I opened today's clip with a little example of a few of them, and I want to feature some setups that I have. There is a very unique app on the App Store called AUM. AUM is very much like MainStage on the desktop. And for many of you who are longtime Logic users on the desktop, MainStage is an amazing performance tool where you can create custom layers, triggers, even control lighting with that live performance tool, and allowed you to bring in all of the Logic plugins and setups that you may have, custom setups that you may have, channel strips. You can bring all those things right into MainStage and use MainStage as a performance instrument. You could create a virtual amp stack, bass rig, even a you could even create an audio or digital or virtual mixer. If you had enough channels coming through an interface, you could set it up to be a virtual mixer and actually run sound using those inputs using MainStage. You could also use MainStage to run drum triggers. You could use it to start and stop sequences that may control lighting. There's some very complex setups that can be done with MainStage. So you can set up AUM to do live performances, whether you are a guitar player, a vocalist, a DJ. There's lots of different ways you can route your audio into your favorite plugins on your iPad and create an amazing immersive experience. So for today, I'm going to talk about some of the favorite synths that I found so far. And one of the first ones is going to be the BA1 by Baby Audio. And this is an emulation of the famous Yamaha CS analog keyboard or synthesizer. I really love some of the tones that I'm getting from this. And right here in AUM, I've put together a couple channels so that we can hear what the BA1 sounds like. And on the other channel, I've loaded up the TAL-UNO-LX plugin, which is a really good emulation of the Roland Juno 60. And perhaps it'll even do some other things that the Juno 60 could not do. So I just want to let you hear what some of these synthesizers sound like. Here's a few examples. One of the cool things about the CS is that you were able to regulate some of the battery level that was coming into the synthesizer. And here you can drop how much power is coming into the synthesizer. I think they've simulated that really well. So on certain patches, that can create a detuning effect, or perhaps it reduces some of the fidelity of the sound to create some really interesting effects. Some extra drive, almost like a preamp drive, maybe adding some distortion to the sound. Of course, you have the ADSR effects on the right for the envelopes. Then you've also got some filters. You can also increase the FM synthesis. The FM synthesis is there added as an extra layer, which you can also pitch that up and down, adding some extra detuning or tuning, maybe an extra layer of texture to your sound, along with all of the other oscillators that are there. I think it's a beautiful emulation of the synth. And check this out, guys. It also changes color. So let's say you had a number of these loaded into your performance patch and you wanted to associate a color with the tone that you've picked. You can certainly do that as well. A beautiful app. There are a beautiful collection of brass and strings. That's what I love about this. You can put together some pads and some sounds that are very usable in different contexts that give you that nice 80s synth warmth, digital warmth. Now, some of you who actually own a CS will probably say, man, Sal, ain't no way, you know? So in one of my next videos, I'm actually going to visit a big brother of mine who actually owns a lot of these vintage synths. And I'm going to challenge him to play each one and talk about what he likes. Above and beyond the feel or the action of the keyboard, what about the tones you're actually getting from the synth? You know, so this is one of the experiments that I would like to do with folks who actually own these analog synthesizers and have kept them in really good condition over the years. So that'll be in another video. Let's take a look at the setup that I have in AUM on my iPad. So AUM is a beautiful app that allows you to load up your synthesizer or your guitar or your audio rack, however you would like to load it. And it connects really well to your USB devices, whether that is an audio or MIDI device. And the way you can load your plugins is by hitting the plus button, select audio, and then at the very top, we're going to pull in our audio source. So we're going to pull it in from a plugin. So you can go ahead and hit the top plus button and then go down to your audio unit extensions. And then from here, you can select your favorite software synth, whether that's the BA1, the TAL-UNO-LX, the Model D Minimoog. We're going to look at that in a little bit. And also some amazing plugins from other developers like gospel musicians who've made the Bassalicious, the MK Sensation Extreme, the Pure Synth Platinum, and the Neo Soul Keys Studio 2. All of these are fantastic plugins that I think you guys should also check out. And of course, I have a number of others that can also be added into the mix as well. Next, I want to assign my keyboard. So I'm going to click on the three lines to the left of the plugin that I just loaded, and I'm going to select one of my keyboard controllers to be the source. Now, an easy way to find the correct keyboard, because I have more than one, I'm going to press some keys, and immediately I'm going to see that it's receiving input here from one of my keyboard controllers. Then I'm going to select the port that is sending the signal. And immediately I'm getting a signal directly from one of my controllers directly to the synth. From there, I can tap on the synth and resize the window. I love this because this is something that iOS doesn't really let us do that freely. But here in AUM, I can open up my windows and I can even stack my windows. To the left of that, I have my BA1. I can just bring that right up, and there it is, stacked. So this is a beautiful plugin that gives me control When I'm done with a particular plugin, I can simply exit away and it's back nested into its channel. And when I want to bring up, change a parameter, I can easily do so, or I can even map some parameters to a specific controls on my controller, which is a beautiful thing. There are a number of variables that you can map and use the MIDI learn option. And then you can simply tweak that, and it's waiting for a MIDI input in order to map that to any control I select. This is handy because some plugins will allow you to do that from within the app. Here you can see there is a MIDI learn option in the TAL-UNO-LX. And from there, you can map it to any one of the variables here. However, if you prefer to have the host DAW handle those controls, you can simply use AUM's control to be able to map your controls there. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and remove this track, and I can simply do that by tapping on it and swiping left. And there it gives me the option to eject it. Okay, another thing I wanted to quickly point out before we move on is the ability to add additional audio effects or even MIDI effects here. So I'm going to add an audio effect, and here I have a number of my audio effects that I can add. Here I'm going to add one of my FabFilter plugins here, which will allow me to EQ the sound that's coming out of this plugin. This may be helpful in a live situation where I need to be able to control the EQ a little bit more, maybe control my bass frequencies or some of the honkier frequencies around 1K, and I want to be able to pull that down. If you don't have an extra mixer to play with, you can just load up your EQ and make some of those changes right then and there and save it. And of course, if you'd like to remove an EQ, you can simply swipe left on it and you have the option to remove it, or you can simply replace it with another one. AUM has its own plugins as well. From stereo balance, switching something to mono, it has the ability to invert the phase, very useful. You can also do some EQing here, some high pass filtering. These are things that are stock to AUM that will allow you to have some more control. And also, you can send a bus and create buses within AUM that is going to be so useful to you if you would like to do some bus routing within the DAW as well. All right, well, let's take a listen to what our synth actually sounds like so that we can listen to this blend of the BA1 and the TAL-UNO-LX. Again, a very retro sound that may bring us back to something that sounds a little bit more like the Beatles. Again, this will bring us back to the early 80s, maybe some of our favorite pop songs that had these analog synthesizers that were warm, bright, had some character. I love the way these developers have emulated those sounds and put those together. So that's an example of what two of them can sound like. I'm going to give you something a little bit reminiscent of maybe the 70s. So let's go ahead and pull up a different setup. So going into AUM, you have the ability to save your sessions. And here I have given it a name of Analog 2. I'm going to go ahead and save that session. It's going to ask me if I'd like to overwrite it, and I'm going to say yes. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a different session called Analog Setup 1. And here I have 3 plugins loaded. And I'm actually going to show you what I would do for first keys. Over here towards the left, I have the Moog Minimoog Model D plugin loaded here. And this, I love this because it is so warm, it's so expressive. On some patches, it's just so bright, so brilliant, so present. And of course, it gives you all of the different LFO controls, the cutoff, the frequencies, the ADSR is all here, all of your oscillators. It's just an amazing representation of the Minimoog, and I love using it. And I've dialed up a patch that I think is very reminiscent of some of the composers from the 70s who like to use patches like this. Okay, so let's see what that would sound like with a really good Wurlitzer representation from gospel musicians. I'm going to go ahead and pull up their Neo Soul Keys 2 plugin, and there's a really nice, warm, whirly 200A emulation in this plugin that I think is beautiful. Let's see what that sounds like together. Very warm sounding tones. And if you had to do a set where it's just you, another solo instrument, perhaps you're doing a soul gig, perhaps playing some old Stevie songs, you may want to just dial that up with the Minimoog Model D on top and a nice whirly underneath. It could get really interesting. So I wanted to see what I could do on the bottom tier with the BA1, just to see how the Minimoog and the BA1 sound together. Again, so 2 different eras. The Minimoog may be coming out of the 70s to 80s era, whereas the CS was definitely for the 80s era. How can you blend those 2 sounds? Again, it's all about creating that palette that's unique for you as the artist, or you as the musician, or you're creating it for somebody else. You have these tools that you can pull up right in your tablet, right in your iPad, and go to town in creating a really nice palette for your artists. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the BA1, and let's see what I have there. Okay, so in the BA1, I have a basic brass loaded up here, patch that I played before. It's a nice analog sounding brass. Not too bright, but has a little bit of warmth in the middle. Let's see how that sounds with the Minimoog, shall we? So you may have just created a nice fusion setup for yourself using some really nice analog sounds here. And again, if you were to try and purchase these synthesizers, it could cost you a few stacks just to be able to get this combination. Here right in the iPad, we have the ability to pull these up and they're right at our touch fingertips for controls. And what I love about AUM is the ability to manage the windows and move things around. And if I wanted to, I could load up all three, really resize these windows, and have access to all of the effects. Here, my Wurlitzer has some effects for auto panning. A chorus I can add to it, reverb controls. You have the ability to really stack up here and create a beautiful virtual rig of some of your favorite devices to work on. And be able to access the controls for each one at any given time. So this, I think, is an effective rig to travel with. And again, it's on your iPad. So portable, so lightweight, so touchable. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this. And I think critics will say, well, yeah, you can touch it. It's glass. You know, you have to fiddle around with it. And I think that the ability to also use a mouse or a trackpad gives you some extra fidelity for those of you that have bigger hands. Maybe you don't want to be touching glass, but you can also map the controls to one of your favorite controllers. Now I have with me an Akai APC25, and I actually did the opening track and sequenced it right on here. And this is something that you can USB MIDI right up on the side here and connect that right to your iPad using the AV adapter dongle, and that will allow you to start using the keys and pads and start mapping some of your controls in AUM as well. This will work for any USB-enabled controller. And let's say you happen to have an older keyboard that will not give you that functionality. You can also Bluetooth into your iPad using something like the Witty Bluetooth wireless MIDI control. And also, if you're using an older keyboard controller where you just love the feel and the faders and the knobs and you want to stick with that and don't want to go with something modern USB, and you have the classic serial controls, you can connect those serial controls right to a USB utilizing this cable. And this one is made by Fast Gear. And you can order this. This will be a serial to USB MIDI cable that will allow you to bring your analog board into the digital sphere using MIDI and accessing some of these great software synths. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little talk about software synthesizers. Check out the BA1 by Baby Audio. Check out the Moog Minimoog Model D plugin. Also, check out the TAL-UNO-LX, which is an emulation of the Juno 60. And also check out the plugins by gospel musicians, which are pulling from some of these classic synths and putting their own urban, modern feel, warm tones, excellent representations of some of the classic synths that I've shown you, as well as some of the classic keys like the Wurlitzer 200A and some Rhodes. Really a great developer, Jamal Hartwell over at Gospel Musicians. Check them out also. So I want to end with this thought. Every musician and artist paints with a different palette. And sometimes those palettes have shades or hues that are not the conventional yellows, blues, oranges, or reds. Maybe your blue has a slightly different hue or different shade. And for many artists, we care about why we have a shade or why there's a particular hue, and less about the colors themselves, but what makes our colors unique. So when you think about creating for yourself or creating even for another artist, study that artist to find out what shades and hues in their sounds make sense. And then think about using synthesizers to add those characteristics, to add that color, to add that little grit or that little dirt into the sound, to really create a nice sound palette for your artist. And this is some of the things that I think can help to make our productions even more expressive. Now, of course, Logic Pro for the iPad allows you to bring in all of the plugins that I mentioned today, and there's a slew more out there, guys. I want you to really explore and create a beautiful palette for yourself. Please check out AUM. There's so many different YouTubers that have done some amazing videos on AUM and how its functionality can really bring a live set to life. So I would love for you guys to check that out and layer up some of your favorite plugins, and let me know in the comments if this is helpful for you in shaping your sound, accessing some old analog sounds. For those of you that may own these keyboards, you may own the CS80 or the Minimoog or the Juno 60. How did these sounds compare to what's in your keyboard? Is this something that you would consider using? Because it's hard to carry around some of those heavy keyboards or heavy racks to different gigs. Would you consider something like this? So these are the conversations I'm really interested in having with you. Thanks for watching today, guys. And please like and subscribe so I can continue to bring more videos your way. I'm really excited about bringing conversations like this to our community. Take care.